You are not suffering because life is hard, but because you keep handing control of your mind to what was never yours to control. Every day you react before you think, judge before you understand, and chase outcomes you cannot govern while ignoring the only thing that belongs fully to you, your own reason and character. This is the source of inner disturbance, and it continues only because it is never examined. What follows is not inspiration, but instruction rooted in disciplined thinking about how to live without self-deception, how to face reality without resistance, and how to return your attention to what you can actually govern in any situation. If you want to continue this work with a community that values clarity over noise and practice over empty words, subscribe and stay present. This is where Stoic discipline is applied, not admired. Number 1. Rule your mind, master your life. Stop here and look at yourself honestly, not at the face you show others, not at the story you repeat about your stress, your schedule, your past, your bad luck, or the people who have disappointed you. Look at the place where your life is actually governed. For most men and women, life is not ruled by reason. It is ruled by impulse, fear, resentment, appetite, vanity, and habit. They call this being busy, they call it being human, but a life directed by every passing impression is not a life directed by the self. It is a life dragged behind it, and if your mind is dragged, your life will always feel like something that happens to you instead of something you live by choice. The first wisdom is this: no event outside you can destroy your character unless you surrender it. No insult, delay, loss, rejection, or burden reaches the center of your being unless you open the door from within. Your enemy is not the world. Your enemy is the part of you that reacts before it judges, that craves before it thinks, that complains before it examines. Master that part, and you begin to live like a free person. Fail to master it, and even a comfortable life will feel like captivity. The mind is where your life is either won or lost. Not in the office, not in the house, not in the comments of strangers, not in the opinion of a crowd that does not know your name and will not carry your suffering. The mind receives an impression, and then there is a choice. That small gap is where your freedom lives. Most people never notice that gap because they rush to agree with their first thought. They say, I am angry, so I must speak. I am afraid, so I must avoid. I am hurt, so I must punish. I am tempted, so I must obey. But a thought is not a command. A feeling is not a verdict. A desire is not a law. The rational part of you was given to you for a reason: to test, to judge, to refuse what is false, and to accept only what is fit for a human being who wants to live well. If you do not train that part, something weaker will take the throne. Then you will call your captivity personality. So begin with the simplest and hardest task. Separate what is up to you from what is not. Your judgments are up to you. Your choice of action is up to you. Your willingness to endure hardship with dignity is up to you. Your honesty is up to you. Your character is up to you. But the weather is not up to you. Other people's minds are not up to you. Fortune is not up to you. Promotion, praise, illness, delay, beauty, age, the past, the future, and the opinions of the crowd are not up to you. Much of human misery comes from trying to control what was never placed in our hands. People spend their strength trying to force reality to obey their preferences. Reality does not care. It never has. The rational person does not ask the world to kneel. He asks himself to stand. He does not waste his days bargaining with the unavoidable. He disciplines his mind to meet it properly. This is not coldness. This is sanity. Every morning, before the day touches you, decide who you are going to be. Do not ask first what you will gain. Ask what kind of soul you will bring into the day. Will you be impatient or measured? Will you be vain or plain? Will you be controlled by the praise of others or steady in your own judgment? Will you chase comfort or practice endurance? The day will present you with opportunities to be dishonest, reactive, lazy, greedy, jealous, and vain. You already know this. You have met these temptations before, so do not pretend surprise. Meet the morning as a soldier meets a field he knows is dangerous, not with fear, but with readiness. Say to yourself, today I will encounter interference, rudeness, noise, incompetence, appetite, and delay. None of these can harm my character unless I let them. Today I will be tested by what I think I deserve. I will answer not with entitlement, but with duty. This is not a ritual for decoration. It is a training of the soul. The mind that begins the day with preparation is harder to break than the mind that begins it with expectation. You must also learn to watch your first reaction as if it belongs to someone else. The first impression is often the loudest and least trustworthy voice in the room. Someone speaks sharply. Your chest tightens. A plan fails. Your mind runs ahead into catastrophe. You receive criticism. Your vanity burns. You are denied something you wanted. Resentment rises and demands a response. In these moments, do not give yourself away at once. Pause, breathe, name the impression. This is an insult. This is disappointment. This is fear. This is desire. Then ask what part of this is actually harmful to my character. Often the answer is nothing at all, unless I choose to make it harmful. The disciplined mind does not rush to become the feeling. It inspects the feeling. It places reason above the first stir of the senses. That is strength. That is self-government. Most people think power is the ability to control others. The Stoic knows power is the ability to refuse being ruled by yourself in your weakest moment. Consider how much of your suffering is created not by events, but by the stories you attach to them. A person did not reply. You decide they have rejected you. Work is difficult. You decide your life is unfair. A mistake was made. You decide you are incompetent. A plan changed. You decide the world is against you. The event is one thing. Your interpretation is another. Between them lies your freedom. If you treat every difficulty as a personal insult from fate, you will live in a state of constant offense. But if you train yourself to see difficulty as material for virtue, the same event becomes a place to practice patience, courage, justice, and self-command. This is not pretending things are pleasant when they are not. This is refusing to confuse discomfort with damage. Hard things do not destroy the soul unless the soul consents to weaken itself. The road is steep, the weather is harsh, the task is heavy. Good. Then the body and the mind have something to prove. There is no dignity in a life built around comfort. Comfort is a pleasant guest, but a terrible master. The person who must have everything easy becomes fragile at the first sign of resistance. He begins to collapse under the slightest inconvenience because he has never learned how to stand without support. So practice small discomfort on purpose. Wake up before the impulse to stay in bed defeats you. Take the cold shower and do not dramatize it. Walk when you could sit. Eat more simply than your cravings demand. Leave the phone untouched for a while and watch how restless the mind becomes when it cannot feed on endless stimulation. These are not punishments, they are reminders. They teach the body that it is not sovereign. They teach the mind that it can endure. They expose the lie that every desire must be obeyed. A man who can say no to himself in small things will not collapse when life says no to him in large ones. You are not harmed by having less. You are harmed by needing more than reason approves. The problem is not the object itself. The problem is the dependence you form around it. Wealth, status, applause, and convenience promise security, but they are unstable foundations. They can be taken, altered, or turned against you. If your peace rests on what can be stripped away, then your peace has no backbone. The Stoic does not despise what is useful. He simply refuses to make it necessary for a good life. He can use a good table, a well-made garment, a strong home, and honest work, but he does not place his worth in them. His worth lies in how he thinks, chooses, speaks, and acts. That cannot be taken by a storm. That cannot be cancelled by a rumor. That cannot be stolen by a thief. What is truly yours is the quality of your mind and the justice of your conduct. Guard that, and you guard the only possession that matters. Much of modern life trains you to be divided against yourself. It asks you to perform, to compare, to advertise, to react, to consume, and to keep score. It tells you to chase the attention of others while ignoring the condition of your own soul. But attention is a moral power. Where you place it, your life grows. If you give your attention to outrage, your character hardens around outrage. If you give it to envy, your soul bends toward resentment. If you give it to vanity, you become dependent on applause. If you give it to the discipline of your own conduct, you become stronger. Watch your attention carefully. It is one of the most valuable things you own, and one of the most easily stolen. In the morning, choose one task and give it your full mind. During conversation, listen without preparing your performance. During work, do the work. During rest, rest without falling into numbness. The scattered person is not free. He is pulled apart by everything that touches him. The disciplined person gathers himself and remains one. When anger rises, remember that another person's wrongdoing does not force you to become wrong yourself. That is your choice. If someone lies, you need not lie. If someone insults, you need not insult back. If someone behaves with cruelty, you need not surrender your justice. Anger often masquerades as strength, but it usually reveals that a person has lost command of himself. He wants immediate repayment because he cannot bear the discomfort of being wronged. Yet the true question is not whether you were offended. The true question is whether you will remain honorable. A wound to pride is not a wound to virtue. Do not confuse the two. People may act badly because they are ignorant, frightened, selfish, or lost. That does not excuse them. It does, however, give you the chance to respond as a rational being rather than as a second fool. You are not obliged to mirror the disorder of others. You are obliged to govern your own conduct. The same applies to desire. Desire is a useful servant and a dangerous master. Untrained desire tells you that comfort is urgent, pleasure is necessary, and delay is intolerable. It makes small things look enormous and makes virtue look inconvenient. It whispers that you deserve to indulge, to avoid, to postpone, to take the easy way, to choose what feels good now and call it freedom. But a person who cannot resist himself is not free. He is occupied by appetite. So whenever desire rises, ask whether what it seeks is truly good or merely pleasant. Pleasant things are not always bad, but they are never the measure of a good life. A good life is measured by right reason and right action. If desire asks you to abandon self-respect, refuse it. If it asks you to act dishonestly for comfort, refuse it. If it asks you to exchange long-term character for short-term relief, refuse it. The soul grows strong, not by getting everything it wants, but by learning that it does not need everything it wants. The day will also test your vanity, and vanity is among the most wasteful diseases of the mind. Vanity turns life outward. It asks, how am I seen? How am I praised? Am I respected? Do they notice me? Do they approve of me? Do they think I matter? But the crowd is unstable and shallow. It will admire you today and forget you tomorrow. To live for approval is to place your worth in hands that are not yours. The Stoic asks a different question. Am I acting with justice? Am I speaking with truth? Am I meeting my duties without deceit? Am I disciplined when no one is watching? The private self matters more than the public self, because your life is lived in private long before it is ever displayed. The person who is noble in secret is already rich. The person who is admired in public but weak in private is already in debt. Do not build a life that requires an audience to feel real. At the end of the day, examine yourself without mercy and without drama. This is not self-hatred, it is self-knowledge. Sit quietly and review what you did with your mind. Where did you react too fast? Where did you speak without justice? Where did you surrender to comfort? Where did you let fear shrink you? Where did you behave as if the body were the master and reason the servant? Do not hide from these questions. The soul improves only when it is brought into the light. Praise is useless if you are lying to yourself. Harsh criticism from others is useless if you will not examine yourself honestly. So become your own examiner, not to indulge guilt, but to correct course. Ask what was within your power, what was not, and what you will do differently tomorrow. This is the work of a free person. He does not drift into becoming better. He chooses it day after day with clear eyes. People often wait for a better season to begin living rightly. They wait for less pressure, more money, a calmer mind, a better relationship, a cleaner schedule, a more favorable world. They imagine that when conditions improve, discipline will become easy, but the conditions are never perfect. Life does not arrange itself around your readiness. The time to practice virtue is always now, inside the exact conditions that are resisting you. This irritation, this obligation, this inconvenience, this temptation, this fatigue, this uncertainty, these are not interruptions to your training. They are the training. Without resistance, there is no proof of strength. Without difficulty, there is no opportunity to exercise the mind. The life you have is the material. Stop imagining another life as a prerequisite for wisdom. Wisdom is proven in the life that stands before you today. When you are tempted to complain, remember that complaint is a confession of helplessness, dressed up as commentary. It announces that reality should have been different, and that you have not accepted the duties placed before you. There is a difference between acknowledging pain and surrendering to whining. A rational person may say, "This is difficult, this is unjust, this is painful." But he does not linger there like a man feeding on his own wound. He asks, "What does virtue require now? What is the proper use of this moment? How do I remain just, steady, and honest under this condition?" Complaint poisons action because it keeps attention fixed on what cannot be changed. Duty restores action by placing attention on what can. The more you complain, the weaker you become. The more you answer with reason, the stronger you become. This is not sentiment, it is discipline. Do not be ashamed of beginning again, because the human mind often needs repeated correction. You will forget, you will slip, you will react, you will get carried away. That is not a reason to despair, it is a reason to return. The disciplined life is not the life of someone who never falls. It is the life of someone who refuses to remain fallen. Every day, bring yourself back to the center, back to what is yours, back to what is not, back to reason, back to duty, back to virtue, back to the present task. There is no glory in perfect moods. There is only dignity in steadfast practice. A person becomes strong by repeated acts of return. He sees that he has drifted, and he comes back, again and again. That willingness to return is itself a sign of health. It shows that the higher part of you is still alive and willing to rule. You should also learn to speak less and mean more. Much speech is a way to avoid honest action. People explain, defend, elaborate, excuse and perform because they do not want to stand plainly before what they must do. But the Stoic mind does not waste words to cover weakness. It states the truth and gets to work. Speak with precision. Say what is necessary. Avoid exaggeration. Avoid self-pity. Avoid the need to be seen as profound. A clear mind does not need ornamental language to prove itself. The quality of your conduct will speak louder than your explanations. In relationships, be truthful. At work, be dependable. In conflict, be measured. In solitude, be consistent. The more your words match your character, the less you will need to repair later. A life built on clean judgment has little use for excuses. You are living in an age of distraction, but the age does not excuse you. It merely reveals whether you have trained your mind. Endless noise, endless opinion, endless comparison, endless appetite, all of it competes for your attention. It is easy to become a creature of reactions. That is exactly why discipline matters more now, not less. The person who cannot sit still with his own thoughts will eventually be governed by whatever is loudest. The person who cannot endure silence will become dependent on constant stimulation. The person who cannot be alone with himself has not yet become trustworthy in his own company. So practice stillness. Sit without reaching for something. Walk without filling the space with distraction. Let your mind settle enough to hear its own disorder, then correct it. A mind that can remain still can also remain firm. A mind that is always reaching is already weak. In hardship, do not ask, "Why me?" That question usually assumes you are exempt from the common lot of human beings. You are not. Everyone faces loss, pain, disappointment, illness, change, betrayal, and death. The only difference is whether they meet these realities with bitterness or with virtue. Ask instead, what is this for? Not in some mystical sense, but in the practical Stoic sense. What opportunity does this present for courage, patience, justice, and wisdom? If you are burdened, then you have the chance to become stronger. If you are delayed, you have the chance to practice patience. If you are insulted, you have the chance to practice self-command. If you are deprived, you have the chance to practice simplicity. If you are confronted by uncertainty, you have the chance to practice trust in reason rather than in fantasy. Nothing is wasted if it is used well. Even what hurts can become raw material for virtue. That is the conversion the disciplined mind learns to make. Remember too that your fear often protects nothing. It only imagines catastrophe and then obeys it in advance. Fear says, "I cannot bear this," but you have borne many things already. Fear says, "I will be ruined," but you have survived loss before. Fear says, "They will think less of me," but their thoughts are not your body, not your soul, not your task. Fear is a commentator, not a prophet. Do not obey its every claim. Test it. Strip it down. Ask what is actually at stake. Often fear shrinks when examined. Often it is built from imagination, not fact. The mind that practices courage is not the mind that feels nothing. It is the mind that refuses to let feeling dictate judgment. Courage is not the absence of tremor. It is the decision to act rightly despite tremor. The old mistake is to confuse being alive with feeling alive. Many people chase intensity because they have forgotten depth. They want stronger sensations, bigger reactions, louder opinions, and more dramatic experiences. But a good life is not a life of constant stimulation. It is a life of stable purpose. The disciplined person does not need every moment to be exciting. He needs every moment to be right. There is peace in this. There is also power. When the mind is no longer addicted to novelty, it becomes easier to see clearly. When the senses are no longer in command, reason can speak. When the appetite quiets, character becomes audible. Much of what people call boredom is simply the soul confronting its own lack of mastery. Do not flee that moment. Use it. Let it reveal where you are weak. Then strengthen that place. You must learn to value character above outcome. The world will often reward the shameless, the lucky, the cunning, and the loud. Do not be surprised. That is not the measure of a life well lived. The measure is whether you remained just while being tested, temperate while being tempted, courageous while being afraid, and wise while being pressured. If you lose an outcome but keep your character, you have not lost what matters. If you gain what the world praises but become dishonest in the process, you have paid too much. Never trade your soul for a result. Results belong partly to fortune. Character belongs to you. and what belongs to you is the only thing you can truly be responsible for. This is how a person becomes unshakable, by refusing to let external success define internal worth. There is one more truth that modern life tries to hide. Time is not endless. It is being spent whether you admit it or not. Every hour you give to distraction is an hour gone. Every hour you give to vanity is an hour gone. Every hour you give to passive resentment is an hour gone. The strongest proof that you respect your life is that you do not waste it. Waste is not only idleness, waste is living without intention. Waste is reacting instead of choosing, drifting instead of directing, consuming instead of becoming. Ask yourself each day, what did I do with the hours given to me? Did I become more just, more patient, more disciplined, more truthful, or did I merely entertain my impulses until the day disappeared? Time will not wait for your self-deception to end. It moves. Your task is to meet it with seriousness. So govern your mind, not tomorrow, not after conditions improve, now. Put the reins in the hands of reason. Question the first impulse. Refuse the easy lie. Separate what you can control from what you cannot. Accept the world as it appears, not as your vanity demands it should be. Practice small hardships so that larger ones cannot break you. Train your attention so that it serves your highest purpose. End each day with an honest review of your conduct. Keep returning to virtue until it becomes your habit. And when you fail, do not dramatize the failure. Correct it. When you are praised, do not become inflated. Remain steady. When you are ignored, do not collapse. Remain steady. When you are tired, remain steady. When you are misunderstood, remain steady. When things go well, remain steady. This steadiness is not passivity. It is strength under command. If you want proof that you are alive, do not seek it in excitement. Seek it in mastery. Seek it in the moment when anger rises and you do not speak. Seek it in the moment when appetite demands and you refuse. Seek it in the moment when fear whispers and you act anyway. Seek it in the moment when no one is watching and you still choose what is right. Seek it in the moment when life offers you comfort and you choose discipline instead. That is where a human being becomes noble. That is where the inner citadel is built. And once built, it gives shelter not from the world, but from your own disorder. That is the great task. That is the only task worth your life. Rule your mind, and your life will no longer be at the mercy of everything that passes through it. Refuse to rule your mind, and no amount of outer success will save you from yourself. The day is already moving. Your thoughts are already shaping your fate. Choose now to govern them and begin the only freedom that lasts. Number 2. Accept reality without bitter resistance. The greatest burden you carry is often not the event itself, but your refusal to let the event be what it is. You tell yourself that life would finally become bearable if people behaved differently, if circumstances aligned with your wishes, if the past could be rewritten, or if tomorrow arrived exactly as you imagined it. Yet everyday reality stands before you exactly as it is, while your mind insists on arguing with it. This silent argument has exhausted more people than hardship ever has. The world does not demand that you approve of everything that happens. It asks only that you see clearly what stands before you. Until you learn this, you will spend your strength fighting what has already occurred, instead of directing your strength toward what can still be done. The disciplined life begins with an uncomfortable admission. Reality has never promised to match your preferences. Seasons change without consulting you. Bodies grow older regardless of your objections. People choose according to their own judgments, not yours. Fortune shifts without warning. Plans collapse despite careful preparation. None of these facts are personal attacks. They are simply the conditions of being human. The person who expects otherwise does not suffer because reality is cruel. He suffers because he has mistaken his expectations for the laws of the universe. Look carefully at your own thoughts whenever disappointment arrives. The event appears first, but almost immediately another voice enters. It says, "This should not have happened." That single judgment becomes the beginning of unnecessary suffering. The event has already taken place. Your resistance changes nothing about its existence. It merely creates a second struggle inside your own mind. One difficulty came from outside. The other is manufactured from within. Most people spend their lives feeding the second while believing they are only fighting the first. There is a profound difference between accepting reality and surrendering your character. Acceptance does not mean approving of injustice, welcoming pain, or abandoning responsibility. It means refusing to waste precious energy denying facts that already exist. A physician cannot heal a wound by pretending it is absent. A sailor cannot command the sea to become calm. A builder cannot construct a strong foundation by denying unstable ground. In the same way, you cannot govern your own life until you first acknowledge the truth exactly as it stands before you. Notice how often resentment disguises itself as righteousness. You replay conversations that cannot be repeated. You rehearse arguments that have already ended. You imagine perfect responses long after the opportunity has disappeared. Meanwhile, the present moment quietly slips away. The mind becomes occupied with ghosts instead of duties. Hours are sacrificed to conversations that exist nowhere except memory. Every moment spent reliving what cannot be altered is a moment stolen from the work that still belongs to you. Train yourself to replace the question, "Why did this happen to me?" with another question entirely. Ask instead, "Given that this has happened, what does reason require now?" That question immediately returns you to solid ground. It removes the temptation to complain and replaces it with responsibility. It shifts your attention from wishing toward acting. Every circumstance contains something that still belongs to your own judgment. Even when everything external has been stripped away, your conduct remains available to you. When someone disappoints you, do not immediately conclude that your peace has been taken. What has actually happened? Another person acted according to their own understanding, their own weaknesses, or their own desires. Their conduct belongs to them. Your response belongs to you. If you answer another person's lack of discipline with your own lack of discipline, then you have doubled the disorder instead of correcting it. Their mistake need not become yours. Preserve your own judgment even when others abandon theirs. The same principle applies when fortune changes unexpectedly. A career shifts direction, an opportunity disappears, a relationship ends, illness interrupts carefully arranged plans. Your first instinct may be to believe that life has turned against you, but life has made no such declaration. Events possess no opinion about you, only your judgment gives them meaning. If you immediately label every hardship as disaster, your own thinking becomes your greatest adversary. If instead you ask how virtue may still be practiced here, every circumstance becomes material for growth rather than evidence of defeat. Begin each morning with an act of deliberate preparation. Before entering the demands of the day, remind yourself that nothing outside your own character has been guaranteed. You may meet delay instead of efficiency. You may encounter criticism instead of praise. You may receive misunderstanding instead of appreciation. Prepare your mind for these possibilities before they arrive. When they appear, they will no longer seem like shocking interruptions. They will simply become opportunities to practice the discipline you already chose at dawn. Throughout the day, examine each impression before giving it permission to rule your thinking. Whenever something disturbs you, pause before naming it either good or bad. Simply observe it. Say to yourself, "This is merely an event. My judgment about it has not yet been decided." That brief pause protects your freedom. Most people surrender that freedom within seconds because they mistake their first emotional reaction for objective truth. The disciplined mind understands that first impressions deserve examination, not immediate obedience. One of the most valuable practices is learning to distinguish between pain and bitterness. Pain often arrives without invitation. Bitterness is usually cultivated through repeated resistance. Pain belongs to the body or circumstance. Bitterness belongs to judgment. Pain may remain for a season. Bitterness can remain for decades because it is continually nourished by memory and resentment. Refuse to feed it. Let pain be temporary. Do not transform it into a permanent feature of your character. You will discover that many frustrations lose their power the moment you stop demanding that reality become different. A long line remains a long line whether you curse it or not. Rain continues falling whether you resent it or not. Another person's opinion remains unchanged by your private anger. Your resistance accomplishes nothing except exhausting the very mind that must continue carrying you through the day. Calm acceptance is not weakness. It is efficient use of inner strength. Practice speaking about difficult circumstances without exaggeration. Replace dramatic language with truthful language. Instead of declaring that everything has been ruined, describe only what has actually occurred. Instead of insisting that you cannot endure another moment, admit that the present moment is uncomfortable. Precision in speech creates precision in thought. The undisciplined mind enlarges every inconvenience until it appears overwhelming. The disciplined mind refuses to add fiction to reality. Another useful discipline is voluntarily interrupting the habit of complaint. For one entire day, resolve that every time you feel the urge to complain, you will instead identify one action still available to you. If work becomes difficult, ask what task deserves your attention next. If someone behaves unfairly, ask how you can remain just despite their conduct. If plans change unexpectedly, ask how you may adapt with dignity. Gradually, your mind begins searching for responsibility instead of excuses. Do not mistake emotional intensity for truth. Strong feelings often create the illusion that your judgments must therefore be correct. Yet emotion frequently arrives before careful examination. Anger insists that revenge is necessary. Fear insists that retreat is wisdom. Desire insists that immediate satisfaction cannot wait. Each feeling presents itself with complete confidence. Reason alone possesses the patience to ask whether any of these demands deserve obedience. The mind that pauses before consenting becomes stronger with every decision. There will be moments when acceptance feels especially difficult because your pride has been wounded rather than your character. Pride resists correction. Pride resents being overlooked. Pride cannot tolerate appearing imperfect. Yet none of these injuries diminish your ability to live with integrity. Much suffering disappears the moment you recognize that what has been threatened is merely your image, not your virtue. Guard your character far more carefully than your reputation, because only one truly belongs to you. At day's end, do not simply remember what happened. Examine how you met what happened. Ask yourself whether you resisted reality or worked alongside it. Ask where expectation replaced wisdom. Ask whether any complaint improved your judgment. Ask whether any resentment strengthened your character. Then identify one moment where you could have accepted more quickly and acted more wisely. Tomorrow, resolve to improve precisely there. Progress comes through honest correction, not through vague intentions. There is also value in occasionally reflecting upon the countless events that once seemed unbearable but eventually became ordinary memories. At the time, you believed you could not continue, yet here you stand. What carried you forward was not perfect circumstances, but your capacity to endure. Let this remind you that today's difficulty also belongs to the changing nature of human life. Do not magnify it beyond its proper size. Acceptance creates unexpected freedom. Once you stop demanding that reality conform to your wishes, your attention becomes available for meaningful work. You no longer waste hours wishing the past had chosen differently. You no longer become trapped in endless arguments with events that have already concluded. Your mind becomes lighter because it carries only what properly belongs to it. Energy once consumed by resistance is now invested in wisdom, justice, courage, and disciplined action. Many people believe peace will arrive only after every problem has been solved. They spend years postponing tranquility until life finally behaves according to their preferences. But such a day never comes. Every stage of life introduces fresh uncertainty. The wiser path is to cultivate steadiness within changing circumstances. Then peace no longer depends upon perfect conditions. It depends upon the quality of your own judgment. Remember that reality is never your enemy. False judgment is. Circumstances reveal your discipline. They do not create it. Every unexpected event invites you to practice calm rather than panic, clarity rather than confusion, responsibility rather than blame. The world continually offers opportunities to exercise the very virtues you claim to admire. Welcome those opportunities, even when they arrive disguised as inconvenience. From this day forward, whenever life refuses to obey your expectations, let that moment become your teacher rather than your opponent. Meet facts before fantasies. Accept what has already occurred without adding resentment to it. Examine every judgment before embracing it. Return your attention again and again to the part of life that truly belongs to you, your choices, your intentions, your conduct, and your willingness to act according to reason. There you will discover a freedom that no changing circumstance can remove. Reality will continue unfolding according to its own nature. Your task is not to command it. Your task is to meet it with an untroubled mind, an honest heart, and a character that remains steady regardless of what the day brings. That is the beginning of genuine strength, and it is available every single time you choose understanding over resistance. Number 3. Virtue outlasts wealth and fame. Wealth dazzles the eyes, and fame flatters the wound in the soul that wants to be seen as greater than it is. That is why so many people chase both as if they were proof of a good life. They are not. They are unstable possessions carried by fortune, and anything carried by fortune can be taken, altered, inflated, reduced, or forgotten. Today a person is admired, tomorrow neglected. Today a person is rich, tomorrow exposed to loss. Today a person is spoken of, tomorrow replaced by the next name, the next face, the next appetite of the crowd. If your peace depends on what is this changeable, then your peace is built on sand. A rational life does not begin by asking what will make you impressive. It begins by asking what will make you just. Look closely at the way people reveal themselves when money or reputation enters the room. They become impatient with truth if truth threatens status. They become generous in public and narrow in private. They speak of principles when principles are convenient, then surrender them the moment the reward changes. They want admiration more than they want integrity, and that is why they end up governed by spectators rather than by reason. The crowd is a poor master. It changes its mind without shame. It applauds what it does not understand and condemns what it no longer finds useful. To live for its approval is to make your soul dependent on noise. The person who trades inner order for outer applause has not gained dignity, he has rented it. Virtue lasts because it belongs to the one thing fortune cannot touch without your consent, your judgment, your choice, your conduct. That is the true possession. Not the house, not the title, not the number in a bank account, not the attention of strangers, not the praise attached to your name for a season. These things may be useful, and they may be pleasant, but they are not good in themselves. They become tools when used with wisdom, and traps when worshipped. Wealth can help you act justly, or it can teach you greed. Fame can expose you to influence, or it can poison you with self-importance. In both cases, the object is not the master, your use of it is. That is why the disciplined mind does not ask whether it can have more. It asks whether it can remain honorable while handling what it has. Many people imagine that if they had enough money, their troubles would vanish. They would feel secure, respected, relieved from fear, free to choose, free to breathe. But wealth does not remove the need for discipline. It magnifies the need for it. More comfort can mean more softness. More status can mean more vanity. More ability to indulge can mean less ability to govern oneself. A person may become surrounded by possessions and yet be poorer in the only sense that matters. If he cannot command his appetites, if he cannot speak truth when it is inconvenient, if he cannot endure being unseen, if he cannot remain humble when praised, then he is a servant dressed as a master. He may own many things and still be owned by them. Do not tell yourself that fame is harmless because it feels good. Praise can be intoxicating. The mind that depends on it becomes strangely fragile. It begins to edit its words, shape its behavior, and choose its goals according to how they will appear. It no longer asks, "Is this right?" It asks, "Will this be admired?" That change is small in language and disastrous in life. A person led by admiration cannot be trusted when no one is watching. He will drift wherever applause points, and when applause fades, he will feel lost because he never learned to stand on his own judgment. The remedy is not to despise every human recognition. The remedy is to refuse to let it determine your worth. Worth is found in the quality of the will, not in the volume of applause. Each morning, before the day begins to pull at you, set this truth in order. What is mine to guard today? Not riches, not reputation, not the weather of other people's opinions. Mine to guard is the honesty of my thoughts, the fairness of my speech, the steadiness of my conduct, the courage to do what is right without bargaining for applause. Begin there. This is how the day becomes useful. If you wake up asking what will make you look successful, you have already surrendered the center of your life to appearances. But if you wake up asking how to remain noble in the tasks before you, you have placed yourself under a better law. There is a quiet humiliation in realizing how much of your stress comes from wanting to be admired for things that do not matter. You want to appear successful, intelligent, attractive, useful, superior, indispensable. You may even call these ambitions harmless. They are not harmless when they begin to govern your actions. They make you exaggerate your importance. They make you fear mistakes that could have been corrected in silence. They make you treat every setback as a public defeat. They make you perform your life instead of living it. The correction is simple and severe. Return to the only question worth asking. Did I act according to virtue? If yes, nothing external can make the day a failure. If no, no amount of praise can make it a success. Practice examining your judgments before you accept them. When the thought comes that you need more money to be safe, pause and test it. Safe for what? Safe from pain, safe from loss, safe from being misunderstood. Nothing external can grant immunity from the human condition. When the thought comes that being recognized would finally settle your insecurity, test that too. Recognition does not heal a weak judgment. It only decorates it. When the thought comes that another person's success diminishes yours, expose that for what it is, a failure to understand that character is not a contest. Another person's gain in wealth or fame does not rob you of the ability to be truthful, disciplined, courageous, and just. Their spotlight and your virtue are not enemies. One is external brightness, the other is inner light. The world teaches competition for what can be measured. Stoic training teaches devotion to what can be chosen. Anyone can be carried upward by favorable winds, but what happens when the winds shift? Does the person collapse, or does he remain upright because his foundation is within? That is the test. Build your life around what remains under your direction when everything else is changing. Your response to insult, your patience under delay, your restraint under temptation, your fairness when you could be selfish, your calm when others panic, your willingness to tell the truth even when the lie would protect your image. These are not ornaments of character, they are character. Learn to be content with enough, not because abundance is evil, but because the soul that cannot define enough becomes enslaved by endless wanting. There is no limit to vanity once it is allowed to rule. There is always a larger audience, a better title, a more polished image, a more impressive possession, a higher social tier to chase. The hungry ego never says it has arrived. It merely changes the form of its appetite. Enough is a moral discipline. It means I will use what is useful without becoming dependent on excess. I will enjoy what fortune provides without begging it to define me. I will live simply enough that loss does not ruin me and modesty does not shame me. This kind of freedom is not found by accumulation. It is found by loosening the grip. You should also practice voluntary simplicity on purpose. Choose, from time to time, to live with less than you can comfortably manage. Eat plainly for a day. Wear what is adequate without turning life into a display. Leave aside the unnecessary conveniences that make you forget how much you can endure. This is not theater, it is training. When you deliberately subtract comfort, you discover whether you are ruled by habit or governed by reason. You discover that much of what you called necessity was only preference, and much of what you feared losing was only habit wrapped in pride. The person who can live simply without complaint is harder to corrupt, easier to steady, and far less vulnerable to fortune. Guard yourself, especially in success, because success tempts the mind to believe it has become exempt from discipline. Money arrives, and the soul grows careless. Attention arrives, and the soul grows inflated. Praise arrives, and the soul begins to take credit for what fortune helped produce. This is the moment of danger, not because success is bad, but because the mind can become drunk on it. At such times, remind yourself that every gift of fortune came with no moral guarantee attached. It does not prove your superiority. It only gives you more material to govern. If you possess wealth, use it without arrogance. If you possess influence, use it without corruption. If people speak highly of you, receive it without dependence. If they stop speaking, continue to do what is right. There is a sober truth that the proud avoid. Death strips all titles down to silence. The wealthy do not keep their accounts in the grave. The famous do not carry their audience beyond it. The soul leaves behind the performance and answers only for the life it actually lived. This is not meant to terrify you into despair. It is meant to rescue you from triviality. Why spend your hours decorating a self that time will erase? Why exhaust yourself building a name when the name cannot walk with you through the final boundary? Better to build a character that has already become its own reward. Better to train the soul to be steady now when the choice is available than to discover too late that you were busy collecting shadows. When jealousy appears, do not excuse it. Examine it. Jealousy reveals that you have mistaken external rank for real worth. Another person is praised, promoted, admired, or enriched, and you feel diminished. But what exactly has been taken from you? Unless you have surrendered your own principles, nothing essential has been removed. Their honors are not your dishonor. Their gains are not your losses. Their public brightness is not the same thing as moral excellence. Correct the false comparison, then return to your own work. Ask whether your judgment is sound, whether your conduct is just, whether your life is becoming more rational. That is the only comparison worth making. At the end of the day, examine yourself without softening the truth. Did you use money as a tool or as an identity? Did you seek respect for what is admirable or for what is merely visible? Did you protect your principles when convenience invited compromise? Did you speak honestly when flattery would have been easier? Did you remember that the only enduring good is the upright use of the mind? This review is not a ceremony, it is a daily correction of the soul. If you do this faithfully, you will begin to notice how little of life's noise deserves your devotion. Let wealth remain an instrument. Let fame remain an accident. Let neither become your master. Your task is greater than being admired and deeper than being comfortable. Your task is to become the sort of person whose worth remains intact under loss, unchanged under praise, and steady under obscurity. A person like that is not waiting for fortune to complete him. He is already complete in the only way a human being can be complete, by choosing virtue above appearance, duty above applause, and reason above appetite. That is what lasts, that is what can be trusted, and that is what no storm, no crowd, no market, and no age can take away. Number 4. Control reactions, not outside events. Most people spend their lives attempting to command a world that has never belonged to them. They become frustrated by the weather, wounded by another person's words, discouraged by delays, angered by mistakes, and frightened by uncertainty. Every disappointment strengthens the belief that peace will finally arrive once everything outside them begins to cooperate. Yet that day never comes. The world continues according to its own nature, while the undisciplined mind remains trapped in endless conflict with circumstances it was never meant to control. Freedom begins the moment you stop demanding authority over what has never been placed in your hands and begin exercising authority over what has. Observe your own reactions with complete honesty. Not your intentions, not your explanations, but your actual responses. A small inconvenience appears and irritation immediately claims your attention. A careless remark reaches your ears and resentment begins writing its own story before reason has spoken a single word. A plan changes unexpectedly and your entire mood shifts as though your character depended upon the outcome. These moments reveal an uncomfortable truth. You are often not responding to reality itself. You are responding to the judgments you create about reality. An event possesses no power to dictate your conduct. It presents itself, nothing more. Your own judgment then decides whether that event becomes an obstacle, an insult, a disaster, or simply another circumstance requiring thoughtful action. This distinction changes everything. Once you understand that your reaction belongs entirely to your own faculty of choice, excuses begin to disappear. Responsibility enters where blame once lived. The mind becomes a place of deliberate decisions rather than automatic impulses. Many people imagine that self-control means suppressing emotion until it eventually erupts with greater force. That is not discipline. True discipline begins much earlier. It begins at the first impression. Before anger becomes speech, before fear becomes retreat, before desire becomes action, there exists a brief moment where the rational mind may examine what has appeared before it. That small interval determines the direction of the entire day. Strength is often nothing more than extending that pause long enough for wisdom to enter. Make it your practice to question your immediate conclusions. When something unpleasant occurs, resist the urge to name it instantly. Instead ask, what has actually happened? Keep your description free from exaggeration. Perhaps someone disagreed with you. Perhaps your plans changed. Perhaps you lost an opportunity. These are facts. Everything beyond them is interpretation. By separating facts from opinions, you prevent imagination from multiplying difficulties that reality never created. There is remarkable power in refusing to become the echo of another person's disorder. Someone may choose impatience, dishonesty, or disrespect. Those choices belong entirely to them. If you answer with the same qualities, you have surrendered your own judgment to another person's weakness. Your conduct should never become dependent upon someone else's lack of discipline. Preserve your character even when others abandon theirs. Their actions are their responsibility. Your response remains entirely your own. Consider how much of daily conflict begins with the expectation that other people should think exactly as you do. You become offended because someone values different priorities. You become frustrated because another person fails to recognize what seems obvious to you. Yet every individual acts according to their own understanding, whether sound or mistaken. Demanding that every mind resemble yours is as unreasonable as demanding that every season resembles spring. Wisdom does not require agreement from everyone. It requires integrity within yourself. Train your mornings before the world begins making demands upon your attention. Sit quietly for a few moments and remind yourself that today you will encounter interruptions, misunderstandings, unexpected delays, and people whose choices may lack wisdom. None of these possibilities require irritation, they merely require preparation. Enter the day expecting opportunities to practice patience rather than expecting perfect conditions. Prepared minds remain steady because they have already accepted that difficulty belongs to ordinary life. Throughout the day, establish a habit of returning your attention inward whenever emotion begins rising quickly. Ask yourself 3 questions. What has happened? What belongs to me in this situation? What response best reflects reason rather than impulse? These questions interrupt the momentum of automatic reactions. They return leadership to the rational part of your mind before emotion claims authority it was never meant to possess. Your greatest victories will rarely be visible to anyone else. They occur in silence. They happen when harsh words arrive and you choose measured speech instead of retaliation. They happen when disappointment appears and you continue fulfilling your responsibilities without complaint. They happen when anxiety attempts to dominate your thoughts and you calmly return your attention to the work immediately before you. These invisible moments shape character far more deeply than public achievements ever could. Do not mistake intensity for necessity. Strong emotion often convinces you that immediate action is required. Anger demands instant response. Fear urges immediate escape. Excitement insists upon immediate commitment. Yet the disciplined person understands that urgency is frequently an illusion created by passion. Reason does not hurry because it does not panic. It observes carefully before deciding. Deliberate judgment prevents countless regrets that impulsive action would otherwise create. One useful exercise is to imagine each challenge as material placed before a skilled craftsperson. A carpenter does not complain because wood possesses knots. A sculptor does not resent rough stone. The material itself provides the opportunity to demonstrate skill. Likewise, every difficult circumstance offers material upon which character may be exercised. Patience cannot exist without delay. Courage cannot appear without uncertainty. Self-restraint cannot develop without temptation. Obstacles do not interrupt virtue. They provide the conditions under which virtue becomes visible. Be especially careful when defending your own emotional reactions simply because they feel justified. The mind possesses remarkable talent for disguising weakness as principle. Irritability becomes honesty. Pride becomes self-respect. Revenge becomes justice. Envy becomes fairness. Before accepting any emotion as righteous, examine whether it truly serves wisdom or merely protects your ego. Honest examination often reveals that what seemed noble was only wounded pride searching for approval. Another discipline worthy of daily practice is reducing the distance between awareness and correction. The undisciplined person notices a poor reaction only after damage has already spread. The disciplined person notices it while it is still forming. He recognizes tension entering his voice. He observes impatience appearing in his thoughts. He senses vanity directing his decisions. Awareness arrives early enough for correction to remain possible. This sensitivity develops only through repeated attention to one's own inner life. There will be occasions when you fail despite sincere effort. You will speak too quickly. You will become irritated before reflection arrives. You will allow disappointment to disturb your judgment. When this happens, refuse both excuses and despair. Admit the mistake plainly. Identify the judgment that produced it. Resolve to recognize that pattern more quickly next time. Every honest correction strengthens the faculty of reason. Every excuse weakens it. The opinions of others provide another field for practice. Praise often invites vanity. Criticism often invites resentment. Both become dangerous when you allow another person's judgment to determine your own peace. Listen carefully if correction contains truth. Ignore empty noise without bitterness. Neither admiration nor disapproval changes the condition of your character unless you permit it. The wise person values accurate self-examination more highly than changing public opinion. Practice delaying your responses in ordinary situations. Before answering criticism, pause. Before sending an emotional message, wait. Before making an important decision under excitement or frustration, allow your thoughts to settle. Delay does not weaken good judgment, it strengthens it. Time often separates passing emotion from lasting wisdom. Many unnecessary conflicts disappear simply because a disciplined mind refused to react during its first emotional impulse. Your speech deserves the same governance as your thoughts. Words spoken without examination frequently become permanent reminders of temporary emotions. Once released, they cannot be recalled. Therefore, make your speech answer to reason rather than emotion. Speak only after deciding whether your words improve the situation, express truth clearly, and preserve your own integrity. Silence guided by wisdom possesses greater strength than loud reactions driven by passion. Each evening, conduct a careful review of the day. Do not ask merely whether events were pleasant or unpleasant. Ask instead where your reactions reflected discipline and where they reflected habit. Recall moments when emotion nearly governed your conduct. Examine what judgments stood behind each reaction. Replace faulty judgments with wiser ones before sleep arrives. In this way, tomorrow begins with greater clarity than today possessed. You will gradually notice something remarkable. Circumstances remain unpredictable, yet your inner life becomes increasingly stable. Problems continue appearing, but they no longer overthrow your judgment. Difficult people continue existing, but they no longer determine your peace. Success becomes easier to receive without arrogance. Failure becomes easier to endure without despair. Nothing outside has fundamentally changed. The transformation has occurred within the faculty that interprets every experience. Never believe that mastering your reactions means becoming indifferent to life. Quite the opposite. It allows you to engage fully without becoming enslaved by every passing circumstance. Compassion becomes steadier because irritation no longer interrupts it. Courage becomes more reliable because fear no longer dictates action. Justice becomes clearer because personal emotion no longer distorts judgment. Self-command does not reduce humanity, it refines it. Remember that every sunrise offers another opportunity to reclaim authority over the only kingdom that has ever truly belonged to you. The world will continue presenting uncertainty, inconvenience, praise, criticism, gain, loss, agreement, and opposition. None of these possess the final word regarding your character. That authority remains with you alone. Guard it carefully. Examine every impression before accepting it. Refuse to surrender your peace to conditions beyond your direction. Return repeatedly to reason whenever impulse demands immediate obedience. The person who learns this discipline discovers a form of freedom that cannot be granted by favorable circumstances and cannot be taken away by unfavorable ones. Such a life stands firm because it is governed from within rather than shaken by everything that happens without. Number 5. Live simply, think with purpose. The life that appears full is often empty where it matters most. Many people surround themselves with possessions, obligations, endless entertainment, and constant noise, yet they cannot sit quietly with their own thoughts for a single hour. They mistake movement for progress and accumulation for fulfillment. Their days become crowded, but their minds remain directionless. The deepest poverty is not the absence of wealth, it is the absence of purpose. A person who owns little but governs himself is richer than one who possesses abundance yet cannot command his own desires. Simplicity is not the rejection of life, it is the deliberate removal of everything that distracts you from living according to reason. Look honestly at the rhythm of your own days. How many actions arise from deliberate choice, and how many are merely habits repeated without examination? You reach for distractions before silence has the opportunity to teach you. You fill every empty moment because stillness feels unfamiliar. You pursue one desire after another without asking whether any of them deserve pursuit. This is how the mind becomes scattered. It loses the ability to distinguish between what is necessary and what is merely attractive. A life without examination slowly becomes a collection of reactions rather than a series of conscious decisions. The disciplined person understands that simplicity begins long before possessions are reduced. It begins within judgment itself. Every unnecessary thought consumes attention. Every imagined argument steals peace from the present hour. Every comparison with another person's life weakens gratitude for the responsibilities already placed before you. The mind becomes exhausted not because reality demands too much, but because it continuously entertains matters that never belonged to it in the first place. Simplicity starts when you refuse to carry burdens created by your own imagination. Many people spend years pursuing what they never paused to evaluate. They chase recognition because others admire it. They seek luxury because society praises it. They compete for positions they secretly do not enjoy simply because success has been defined for them by voices they never questioned. A rational person refuses to inherit another person's ambitions without careful examination. Before pursuing anything, ask yourself whether its possession would improve your character or merely satisfy your vanity. If the answer points only toward appearance, then no lasting benefit will follow regardless of how impressive the achievement may seem. Purpose grows from understanding what your life is actually for. You were not given reason merely to consume pleasure more efficiently than other creatures. You were given reason so that every choice might be governed by wisdom instead of appetite. Each day presents countless opportunities to practice honesty, justice, moderation, and courage. These opportunities often arrive disguised as ordinary responsibilities rather than dramatic moments, the conversation requiring patience, the task requiring diligence, the temptation requiring restraint, the disappointment requiring composure. These humble moments shape the soul far more deeply than extraordinary events. Begin each morning by deciding what deserves your attention before the world decides for you. Sit quietly before activity begins and identify the duties that truly belong to the day. Do not create a list based upon urgency alone. Build it according to virtue. Ask which actions fulfill your responsibilities faithfully. Ask where your presence is genuinely needed. Ask which distractions quietly pretend to be important while contributing nothing to your character. A clear beginning prevents a confused day. The person who enters the morning without intention often spends the evening wondering where his time disappeared. Guard your attention as carefully as you would guard a valuable possession, because attention determines the direction of your life. Whatever repeatedly occupies your thoughts gradually shapes your character. If your mind continually dwells upon envy, resentment quietly becomes familiar. If it constantly pursues pleasure, self-restraint begins to weaken. If it repeatedly returns to duty, gratitude, and sound judgment, those qualities gradually become natural companions. Every thought welcomed repeatedly becomes part of the person you are becoming. Therefore, choose carefully what receives your mental hospitality. Simplicity also requires honesty about desire. Not every wish deserves fulfillment simply because it appears within you. Many desires arise from habit rather than necessity. Others emerge from comparison rather than genuine need. Before acting upon any strong impulse, ask whether satisfying it strengthens your ability to live wisely or merely increases dependence upon temporary comfort. Every unnecessary attachment creates another condition that must remain favorable before you believe yourself capable of peace. The freer path is learning how little is actually required for a disciplined mind to remain content. Examine how often your schedule reflects other people's expectations instead of your own considered judgment. You agree to obligations that exhaust you because you fear disappointing others. You pursue projects without conviction because you dislike appearing unambitious. You continue habits that no longer serve reason simply because abandoning them might invite criticism. In each of these situations, your life slowly ceases belonging to you. A person governed by external approval cannot live simply because his decisions are continually crowded by imagined audiences. Freedom returns when your choices answer first to virtue rather than popularity. Practice reducing unnecessary complexity in small ways each day. Complete one task before beginning another, instead of dividing your attention among many unfinished efforts. Speak plainly rather than decorating simple truths with excessive explanation. Keep your commitments manageable enough that each may be fulfilled with excellence. Remove activities that consume time without strengthening character. Simplicity is not achieved through dramatic change alone. It grows through repeated decisions to eliminate what distracts from what truly matters. You will discover that much anxiety disappears when you stop measuring yourself against lives you cannot fully see. Comparison creates endless dissatisfaction because appearances reveal only surfaces. Another person's achievements tell you nothing about the condition of their judgment. Their possessions reveal nothing about their inner discipline. Their recognition says nothing about their peace of mind. Looking constantly toward others prevents you from noticing the work your own character requires. Return your attention to yourself, not with selfishness, but with responsibility. Your task has never been to imitate another life. It has always been to govern your own. Purpose requires that every action answer a worthy question. Before beginning important work, ask why you are doing it. If your answer depends entirely upon praise, profit, or admiration, examine it more carefully. Those outcomes remain uncertain because they depend upon circumstances beyond your command. Instead, ground your effort in what remains within your authority. Work diligently because diligence expresses integrity. Speak honestly because truth belongs to good character. Serve others fairly because justice deserves practice, regardless of recognition. When purpose rests upon virtue, disappointment loses much of its power because success has already been defined correctly. Throughout the day, pause whenever you notice your thoughts becoming scattered. Bring your attention back to the present responsibility. Resist the temptation to carry tomorrow's uncertainties into today's work. Refuse to revisit conversations that have already ended unless genuine correction remains possible. The disciplined mind does not wander endlessly through imaginary futures or unchangeable pasts. It returns repeatedly to the only place where reason may actually be exercised, the present moment and the duty immediately before it. Another valuable discipline is learning to welcome enough instead of endlessly pursuing more. Satisfaction does not come from exhausting every opportunity for acquisition. It comes from recognizing when additional possessions no longer improve the quality of your character. There is profound strength in saying, "What I have is sufficient for the work virtue requires today." Such contentment does not prevent ambition directed by reason. It prevents greed disguised as ambition. It allows gratitude to coexist with continued effort. Be cautious whenever complexity begins masquerading as importance. Many people believe their lives possess greater value because they remain constantly overwhelmed. They fill every hour until exhaustion itself becomes a source of pride. Yet a crowded calendar does not necessarily reflect meaningful living. Often it reveals an inability to distinguish essential responsibilities from avoidable distractions. The disciplined person values depth more than quantity. He performs fewer actions with greater integrity rather than many actions carelessly. During conversations, practice listening without preparing your next response while another person is still speaking. Such attention reflects inner simplicity because it frees the mind from constant self-concern. Genuine listening requires setting aside the desire to appear clever, persuasive, or impressive. It asks only that you understand clearly before attempting to be understood. This quiet discipline strengthens humility and improves judgment because truth becomes easier to recognize when the mind is not occupied with defending itself. At the close of each day, conduct an honest examination of how you invested your attention. Do not measure the day merely by completed tasks. Measure it by the quality of your judgment throughout those tasks. Ask where unnecessary desire complicated simple responsibilities. Ask where comparison distracted you from your own duties. Ask where scattered thinking prevented wholehearted effort. Then identify one unnecessary burden you will refuse to carry tomorrow. Gradual simplification produces lasting transformation because each correction strengthens the habit of living intentionally. Remember that simplicity does not mean withdrawing from responsibility or abandoning meaningful effort. It means approaching every responsibility with an ordered mind rather than a divided one. Purpose does not require extraordinary circumstances. It requires ordinary faithfulness practiced consistently. Every honest decision, every restrained impulse, every carefully examined judgment strengthens the foundation upon which a wise life is built. The world will continue offering countless distractions disguised as necessities. It will encourage endless consumption while neglecting inner discipline. It will celebrate appearances while overlooking character. Do not allow your judgment to be shaped by these invitations. Choose instead the quieter path that asks less about what you possess and more about who you are becoming. Let your thoughts serve reason rather than impulse. Let your schedule reflect duty rather than vanity. Let your possessions remain useful servants instead of demanding masters. A simple life guided by purposeful thinking cannot be shaken easily because its foundation rests where fortune holds no authority. External conditions may change without warning. Comfort may increase or disappear. Recognition may arrive or remain absent. Yet the person who has trained his judgment continues walking the same path. His direction comes from within, not from changing circumstances. He understands that every sunrise presents the same enduring responsibility: to think clearly, choose wisely, fulfill today's duties faithfully, and preserve the integrity of his character above every passing distraction. In such a life there is quiet strength, lasting freedom, and a peace that grows not from possessing more, but from needing less while becoming better. Number 6. Face adversity with quiet strength. Adversity does not arrive to ask whether you feel prepared. It enters your life without consulting your plans, your preferences, or your confidence. A difficult conversation, an unexpected loss, a season of uncertainty, a betrayal, a failure, an illness, or a door that closes despite your greatest effort. These are woven into the human condition, yet most people suffer twice. They experience the hardship itself, and then they exhaust themselves demanding that hardship should never have existed. They spend precious strength arguing with reality instead of preparing their character to meet it. The wiser path begins with a simple recognition. You cannot choose every event that reaches your life, but you can choose the quality of the person who meets it. Quiet strength is often misunderstood because the world celebrates louder qualities. It praises dramatic displays of confidence, visible victories, and impressive performances. Yet genuine strength rarely announces itself. It appears in the person who remains composed while others surrender to panic. It appears in the one who continues acting justly when treated unfairly. It appears in the individual who refuses to abandon reason simply because circumstances have become uncomfortable. Strength is not measured by how forcefully you express emotion. It is measured by how faithfully you preserve your character when emotion invites you to betray it. Many people imagine that hardship creates weakness. In truth, hardship reveals what was already present beneath comfort. When life proceeds according to your wishes, almost anyone can appear patient, generous, and calm. The real examination begins when events no longer cooperate. Delay tests patience, insult tests self-command, loss tests gratitude, uncertainty tests courage. Difficulty does not invent your character, it uncovers it. If you wish to know who you truly are, observe yourself not during success but during resistance. When adversity appears, your first task is not to solve everything immediately. Your first task is to protect your judgment. Before searching for answers, guard the mind that must discover them. Strong emotion often rushes forward with dramatic conclusions. It whispers that everything is ruined, that nothing will improve, that this burden is impossible to bear. These thoughts seek immediate agreement. Do not grant it. Let reason speak before emotion receives authority. A disciplined mind never accepts its first fearful conclusion without careful examination. Ask yourself a better question whenever hardship arrives. Instead of asking why this happened, ask what part of this situation belongs to your own responsibility. This single question prevents the mind from wandering into helplessness. You may not command the event, but you always retain authority over your conduct. You may not remove every obstacle, but you may decide whether honesty, patience, justice, and courage remain present within your actions. The mind becomes steadier when it stops searching for impossible control and begins exercising the control it already possesses. One of the greatest mistakes people make during adversity is believing that their suffering excuses poor character. They convince themselves that anger is justified because they have been wronged. They excuse dishonesty because they have been treated unfairly. They abandon moderation because life has become difficult. Yet hardship does not release you from the obligation to live well. It increases the importance of doing so. Character is not something you preserve only when circumstances are pleasant. It is something you protect most carefully when circumstances invite compromise. Every morning, remind yourself that the day ahead is not required to be easy in order to be meaningful. Prepare your thoughts before the world begins testing them. Say to yourself that today may contain frustration, disappointment, misunderstanding, or delay. None of these conditions can prevent you from acting with integrity unless you willingly surrender your judgment. This preparation does not make you pessimistic, it makes you ready. The unexpected loses much of its power when your mind has already accepted that difficulty belongs to ordinary life. As you move through the day, develop the habit of pausing whenever adversity first appears. Whether it is an unwelcome message, an unexpected setback, or a careless remark from another person, resist the temptation to answer immediately. Let there be a deliberate space between the event and your response. Within that space, ask whether your next action will strengthen your character or merely satisfy a passing emotion. Many regrets are born because people react before they think. Many victories remain invisible because disciplined people think before they respond. Do not seek comfort at the expense of growth. The mind naturally prefers ease, but ease cannot teach what adversity patiently reveals. Comfort rarely exposes hidden pride. It rarely uncovers fear disguised as caution. It rarely forces you to confront your dependence on external conditions. Hardship performs this work without asking permission. If you meet it honestly, it becomes one of the greatest instructors you will ever encounter. Not because suffering is good in itself, but because it reveals where your discipline remains incomplete. Be careful not to exaggerate the size of your burden through careless thinking. The mind often transforms temporary difficulty into permanent disaster by speaking in absolutes. It declares that everything is ruined, that nothing will improve, or that one failure defines an entire life. These judgments add weight that reality never required you to carry. Describe your circumstances accurately instead of dramatically. Truth provides enough challenge without imagination multiplying it further. Precision in thought preserves clarity when confusion seeks control. When another person becomes the source of your hardship, remember that you remain responsible for your own conduct, not theirs. You cannot force wisdom into another mind. You cannot compel honesty, gratitude, or fairness from someone who has not chosen those qualities. But you can refuse to let another person's disorder become the excuse for your own. Preserve justice even when treated unjustly. Maintain patience even when others display impatience. Hold firmly to honesty even when deception appears easier. Your character should never become a reflection of someone else's failures. Quiet strength also requires accepting that some questions will remain unanswered. There will be moments when no explanation fully satisfies the mind. You may never understand why certain opportunities disappeared or why particular hardships entered your path. The desire for complete certainty often becomes another form of resistance. Instead of demanding answers beyond your reach, return your attention to what can still be accomplished today. A single act of integrity performed amid uncertainty possesses greater value than endless speculation about matters that cannot be resolved. Practice voluntary difficulty from time to time while circumstances are still favorable. Choose tasks that require effort without immediate reward. Accept inconvenience without complaint. Delay small comforts to strengthen self-command. These exercises prepare the mind before greater adversity arrives. The person who has never willingly embraced discomfort often becomes overwhelmed when unavoidable hardship appears. The one who has trained through deliberate discipline discovers that endurance is not foreign territory, but familiar ground. There will be days when progress seems invisible. You will continue choosing reason, yet circumstances may remain unchanged. Continue anyway. The value of discipline is not measured by how quickly fortune rewards it. It is measured by the kind of person you become while practicing it. External success may arrive slowly or not at all. Inner strength develops each time you refuse to surrender your principles despite disappointment. That growth belongs entirely to you, independent of outcomes beyond your authority. Pay close attention to the stories you tell yourself during difficult seasons. If you continually describe yourself as defeated, helpless, or abandoned by fortune, your own words gradually shape your expectations. Instead, remind yourself only of what is true. This challenge is real. It demands effort. It may remain for some time, yet your capacity for wise judgment, honorable conduct, and courageous action has not been taken from you. These remain available each moment you choose to exercise them. At the close of every difficult day, do not measure yourself solely by whether the problem disappeared. Measure yourself by how faithfully you carried your responsibilities while it remained. Ask whether you protected your integrity under pressure. Ask whether your speech remained measured when emotion urged excess. Ask whether you preserved fairness despite frustration. Ask where fear attempted to govern your choices, and where reason successfully reclaimed its rightful place. This examination transforms adversity into instruction rather than memory alone. One of the quietest forms of courage is continuing ordinary duties while carrying extraordinary burdens. Many imagine courage as dramatic action performed once in a lifetime. More often it appears in rising each morning despite discouragement. It appears in fulfilling responsibilities without demanding sympathy. It appears in treating others with kindness while privately enduring struggles they never see. Such courage attracts little attention, yet it strengthens the soul more deeply than public recognition ever could. Remember that adversity possesses no authority to define your worth. It reveals circumstances, not identity. Failure does not make you worthless. Loss does not make you incomplete. Criticism does not determine your value. These events become meaningful only through the judgments you attach to them. Refuse to mistake changing conditions for permanent truths about yourself. You remain capable of wisdom after failure, capable of justice after disappointment, capable of courage after fear, and capable of self-command after every setback. As your discipline matures, you will notice a profound change. Difficulties will not disappear from your life, yet they will cease governing your inner world. You will begin meeting hardship with greater steadiness because your confidence no longer depends upon favorable circumstances. It rests upon something far more reliable: the knowledge that whatever the day presents, you possess the ability to examine your judgments, choose your response carefully, and preserve your character. This confidence cannot be granted by fortune because it was never created by fortune. When the next season of adversity arrives, do not ask life to become easier before you become stronger. Ask instead whether your judgment remains clear, whether your actions remain honorable, and whether your attention remains fixed upon what truly belongs to you. Stand quietly before difficulty without resentment, without self-pity, and without surrendering the government of your own mind. Let others be carried away by panic if they choose. Your work is different. Your work is to remain faithful to reason when confusion spreads, faithful to virtue when compromise appears convenient, and faithful to your own disciplined character when every external condition invites you to abandon it. Quiet strength is not the absence of hardship. It is the unwavering decision to meet hardship without allowing it to conquer the part of you that was always meant to remain free. Number 7. Time is life. Waste nothing. Every morning you awaken with a treasure that cannot be stored, replaced, borrowed, or recovered once it is spent. You call it time, but its true name is life. Every hour that passes is not simply another measure on a clock. It is a portion of your existence leaving forever. Yet few people guard it with the seriousness it deserves. They protect their money more carefully than their attention. They defend their possessions more fiercely than their days. They become angry when small amounts of wealth are wasted, yet surrender entire years to distraction, hesitation, resentment, and pursuits that leave their character unchanged. Before you ask whether your life is becoming meaningful, ask first where your hours have been quietly disappearing. Most people imagine that life is shortened by old age. More often, it is shortened by unconscious living. A person may reach many years without ever truly governing a single day. He wakes without intention, reacts without examination, speaks without reflection, and rests without learning. One day resembles another because none of them were directed by reason. Time does not vanish all at once. It disappears through neglected mornings, postponed duties, needless arguments, endless entertainment, and the habit of believing there will always be another opportunity to begin living wisely. The greatest theft often happens without a thief. It happens when you willingly surrender your attention to everything except what deserves it. You often speak as though tomorrow belongs to you. You plan, delay, postpone, and reassure yourself that discipline can wait until circumstances improve. But tomorrow has never been promised. The only time placed within your authority is the present moment. This is not a reason for anxiety. It is a call to clarity. If today is the only part of life you truly possess, then today deserves your complete attention. Do not burden it with endless regret over what has already ended, or endless fear about what has not yet arrived. The present hour asks only one question. What is the right thing to do now? Look honestly at how easily your mind escapes the present. It wanders into memories that cannot be altered. It invents conversations that will never occur. It rehearses victories that exist only in imagination or relives failures long after they have finished teaching their lesson. Meanwhile, the duty directly before you remains neglected. The disciplined mind refuses this habit. It understands that every moment spent dwelling where action is impossible weakens the ability to act where responsibility still exists. The greatest enemy of a meaningful life is not always idleness. It is often aimless activity. You remain constantly occupied, yet accomplish little that strengthens your character. Your calendar becomes full while your judgment remains neglected. You complete endless tasks but rarely examine whether those tasks deserve your devotion. A life can become crowded without becoming purposeful. Motion alone is not evidence of progress. Before accepting any commitment, ask whether it serves virtue or merely satisfies habit, pride, or fear of missing out. Not everything demanding your attention deserves your life. Begin each morning before the noise of the world enters your mind. Sit quietly and remind yourself that this day is not an ordinary possession. It is a portion of your existence entrusted to you only once. Decide how you intend to use it before circumstances begin making decisions on your behalf. Identify the responsibilities that belong to you. Resolve to perform them with honesty, patience, justice, and moderation. Let your first thoughts belong to reason rather than impulse. A well-governed morning often shapes the entire day. As the hours unfold, practice guarding your attention with unwavering discipline. Attention is the gateway through which your life is spent. Wherever your attention repeatedly rests, your days gradually follow. If your mind continually feeds on comparison, resentment, or idle curiosity, your character slowly bends toward those habits. If your attention returns consistently to truth, duty, and careful judgment, those qualities become the architecture of your inner life. Protecting attention is therefore not merely a matter of productivity. It is an act of moral responsibility. Be especially cautious of delay disguised as preparation. The mind often invents convincing reasons to postpone necessary action. It claims that conditions must become perfect before discipline can begin. It insists that confidence must arrive before courage becomes possible. It waits for motivation before fulfilling duty. Yet virtue has never depended upon ideal circumstances. It begins wherever you stand. Every postponed act of wisdom strengthens the habit of postponement itself. Every immediate act of reason weakens it. Progress belongs not to those who wait for readiness, but to those who choose rightly despite uncertainty. One of the clearest signs that time is being wasted is the habit of living according to other people's expectations instead of your own examined judgment. You spend hours trying to protect an image that exists only in the minds of others. You shape your choices around approval that cannot remain constant. You sacrifice peace for recognition that disappears as quickly as it arrives. In doing so, you surrender portions of your life to opinions you cannot govern. Return ownership of your days to yourself by allowing your conduct to answer to virtue rather than public attention. Practice completing each responsibility with full presence. Whether your task is ordinary or demanding, give it your undivided effort. The scattered mind performs many actions poorly because it is never fully where it stands. A disciplined mind performs even simple duties with excellence because it has learnt the art of complete attention. This habit transforms ordinary work into training for the soul. Every carefully completed action strengthens patience, diligence, and self-command. Do not mistake endless consumption for genuine rest. There is a difference between restoring the mind and escaping from it. Rest renews your ability to live wisely. Escape merely postpones self-examination. Many hours disappear because people seek constant distraction whenever silence invites them to meet themselves honestly. Learn instead to become comfortable in stillness. Within quiet reflection, you discover where your judgments require correction, where your desires have become excessive, and where your conduct can become more faithful tomorrow. Throughout the day, pause whenever you notice yourself rushing without purpose. Ask a simple question. Is what I am doing now worthy of a portion of my life? This question reaches deeper than efficiency. It examines value. Some activities deserve patient effort because they fulfill duty. Others deserve immediate abandonment because they consume attention while contributing nothing to wisdom. Repeatedly asking this question gradually purifies the way you spend your days. Your speech also deserves careful economy. Words consume time for both the speaker and the listener. Speak only what serves truth, justice, or necessary kindness. Idle complaint steals minutes that cannot return. Endless gossip wastes attention on lives you are not responsible for governing. Careless argument scatters energy better invested elsewhere. The disciplined person understands that thoughtful silence often preserves more life than unnecessary conversation. When disappointment interrupts your plans, do not conclude that the day has been lost. One unexpected event cannot steal your time unless you allow resentment to occupy the remaining hours. A setback may change your schedule without diminishing your opportunity to practice virtue. Patience remains available. Fairness remains available. Honest effort remains available. The wise person adjusts without surrendering the purpose of the day. External interruption becomes only a change of circumstance, not a collapse of character. Practice setting limits on unnecessary desires, because every additional craving demands another portion of your life. The more things you convince yourself you must possess, the more hours you must dedicate to chasing, protecting, comparing, and worrying about them. Simplicity returns time to its rightful owner. A person content with enough possesses greater freedom than one endlessly occupied maintaining excess. Time expands not because the clock changes, but because the mind becomes less divided. As evening approaches, refuse to let the day disappear without examination. Sit quietly before sleep and review how your life was spent. Do not ask only whether you remained busy. Ask whether your choices reflected wisdom. Ask whether resentment consumed hours that should have belonged to duty. Ask whether fear delayed actions that reason already approved. Ask whether attention wandered toward trivial matters while essential responsibilities waited. This daily review transforms passing experience into lasting instruction. Do not condemn yourself for every imperfection you discover. Honest correction is stronger than harsh self-accusation. If you wasted an hour, learn how it happened. If you allowed distraction to overcome discipline, identify the judgment that permitted it. Then prepare a wiser response for tomorrow. Improvement belongs to those who examine themselves truthfully, without hiding behind excuses or surrendering to discouragement. Remember that every sunrise quietly reduces the number of days remaining to you. This truth is not meant to burden your spirit, but to awaken it. The awareness that life is limited gives urgency to every virtuous decision. It reminds you not to postpone reconciliation when justice calls for it, not to delay honest work when responsibility stands before you, and not to waste precious attention on matters that neither improve your character nor fulfill your duties. There will always be voices inviting you toward distraction. They will promise comfort without discipline, entertainment without reflection, and activity without purpose. If you follow them blindly, you may fill your years while emptying your life. Resist that invitation. Let your days be directed by reason rather than impulse. Let every hour become an opportunity to strengthen your judgment instead of weakening it through careless habit. When you finally understand that time is not something you possess, but something you are continually becoming, your entire way of living begins to change. You no longer ask merely how to pass the day, you ask how to honor it. You no longer measure success by how much you accumulate, but by how faithfully you used the life entrusted to you. Every moment becomes valuable because every moment offers another opportunity to choose wisdom over impulse, duty over distraction, truth over appearance, and virtue over convenience. Guard your time because it is your life unfolding before you. Spend it deliberately, examine it honestly, direct it wisely. Let no passing pleasure persuade you to neglect your character, and let no temporary difficulty convince you that today's responsibilities can wait for another season. Live each hour with the quiet awareness that nothing external can make this day meaningful unless your own judgment does. When the evening arrives, let it find you not wondering where your life has gone, but knowing that this day, however ordinary it appeared, was lived with intention, integrity, and unwavering devotion to the only possession that was ever truly yours, the right use of the present moment. Number 8. Let reason defeat every emotion. The greatest battles of your life will not be fought against other people. They will be fought within the narrow space between an event and your judgment of it. Long before your hands move, your voice rises, or your choices become visible, your mind has already decided whether you will become a servant of impulse or a guardian of reason. Most people never notice this silent struggle. They believe anger forced them to speak, fear forced them to retreat, desire forced them to compromise, or grief forced them to abandon their duties. Yet no emotion has ever possessed the authority to govern your character unless you first surrendered that authority yourself. Your mind was not given to you so that every feeling could become a command. It was given so that every impression could be examined before it became action. This is the difference between living as a rational human being and living as a prisoner of changing passions. Emotions arrive without invitation. They rise quickly, often before conscious thought has fully awakened. Their arrival is not your failure. Your failure begins only when you crown them as rulers without first asking whether they deserve obedience. Think carefully about the moments you regret most. Rarely do they arise from patient reflection. They are usually born from an ungoverned reaction, a sentence spoken in anger that damaged a friendship, a fearful decision that abandoned an important responsibility, a moment of envy that poisoned gratitude, a burst of pride that closed your ears to necessary correction. These moments feel sudden, yet each one followed the same pattern. An emotion appeared, judgment fell asleep, and impulse took command. The consequence was not created by the emotion itself, but by the absence of disciplined examination. The undisciplined mind mistakes intensity for truth. It assumes that because a feeling is powerful, it must also be correct. But strength of feeling proves nothing about the accuracy of judgment. Fear can be overwhelming while the danger is small. Anger can burn fiercely while the offense is minor. Desire can become irresistible while the object itself offers no lasting benefit. Emotion measures urgency, reason measures reality. If you allow urgency to silence reality, you exchange wisdom for impulse without noticing the cost until the damage has already been done. Each morning, before the demands of the day begin shaping your attention, prepare your mind for the impressions that will surely arrive. Tell yourself that today you may encounter disrespect, delay, disappointment, misunderstanding, temptation, praise, and criticism. None of these experiences possess the power to determine your conduct. They simply present opportunities to exercise your faculty of judgment. By expecting the arrival of strong emotions, you remove much of their surprise. A prepared mind is less easily captured because it has already accepted that emotional disturbances belong to ordinary human life. Throughout the day, cultivate the discipline of the deliberate pause. Whenever a powerful feeling begins to rise, refuse to move immediately from sensation into action. Allow your reason a moment to observe what is happening within you. Ask yourself what the emotion is trying to persuade you to believe. Then ask whether that belief deserves your agreement. This brief examination often prevents hours, days, or even years of unnecessary regret. Mastery rarely requires extraordinary effort. It often requires only the willingness to delay obedience until reason has completed its work. Do not wage war against emotion itself. That would be another mistake. Feelings are signals, not masters. They reveal how your present judgments are shaping your experience, but they do not automatically reveal what is true. When anxiety appears, examine the belief beneath it. When resentment emerges, investigate the expectation that produced it. When pride grows, question the story you are telling yourself about your own importance. Every emotion becomes an invitation to deeper self-examination rather than an excuse for immediate action. Pay particular attention to anger because it often disguises itself as strength while quietly weakening judgment. Anger promises clarity, yet it narrows your vision until only offense remains visible. It convinces you that immediate retaliation is courage, even when restraint would require greater discipline. Once anger becomes your guide, fairness disappears, patience dissolves, and wisdom is pushed aside by the urgent desire to strike back. Refuse to allow another person's lack of self-command to become the architect of your own behavior. Their conduct belongs to them. Your response belongs entirely to you. Fear deserves equally careful examination. Fear often speaks with the voice of certainty, predicting failure before effort has begun. It urges retreat from responsibilities that demand courage. It magnifies uncertainty until ordinary challenges appear impossible. Yet fear is frequently concerned with imagined outcomes rather than present realities. Bring your attention back to what actually stands before you. Ask what action reason requires now, not what disaster imagination predicts tomorrow. Courage does not eliminate fear. It prevents fear from becoming the author of your decisions. Desire can be even more deceptive because it often arrives wearing the appearance of harmless pleasure. It whispers that one small compromise will make no difference, that one indulgence deserves no examination, that immediate satisfaction is more valuable than lasting integrity. Left unchallenged, these small concessions gradually reshape the soul. Character is not usually abandoned through dramatic betrayal. More often it is surrendered through countless moments when desire speaks louder than reason and no correction follows. Train yourself to distinguish between what you feel and what you choose. You may feel irritation without choosing harshness. You may feel disappointment without choosing despair. You may feel temptation without choosing surrender. This distinction protects your freedom. Once you understand that emotion and action are not identical, you begin recovering authority over your own life. Your feelings may visit without permission, but your choices remain under the guardianship of your judgment. As evening arrives, examine not the emotions you experienced, but the responses you selected. Ask yourself where reason remained awake and where impulse quietly seized control. Notice the situations that repeatedly disturb your judgment. These recurring patterns reveal where further discipline is needed. Do not condemn yourself for discovering weakness. Welcome the discovery. Hidden faults cannot be corrected. Recognized faults can become the beginning of wisdom. Number 9. Character defines every true victory. The world teaches you to measure victory by outcomes that can be seen. It points toward wealth, influence, applause, status, possessions, and the ability to stand above others. From childhood, you are encouraged to believe that success belongs to the one who accumulates the most and loses the least. Yet if these measures truly defined a victorious life, then every person surrounded by comfort would possess lasting peace, and every celebrated individual would live free from inner conflict. Reality tells a different story. Many who appear victorious before the world remain defeated within themselves. They have conquered opportunities while surrendering their judgment. They have gained recognition while losing self-command. They have won admiration while becoming strangers to their own conscience. A life cannot be called successful if its greatest achievement required the abandonment of character. The first question you should ask yourself at the end of every day is not whether you accomplished everything you planned. Ask instead whether you remained faithful to the person you intended to become. External achievements belong partly to circumstances beyond your authority. Character belongs entirely to the choices you make while facing those circumstances. Fortune may assist or oppose your efforts, but it cannot force you to become dishonest, unjust, impatient, or cowardly. Those decisions remain your own. This is why true victory is always available. It depends not upon what the world grants you, but upon how faithfully you govern yourself. Many people lose themselves because they quietly exchange principles for advantages. They justify small compromises by convincing themselves that the reward will make those compromises worthwhile. They sacrifice honesty to gain approval. They abandon fairness to secure influence. They neglect responsibilities in pursuit of recognition. Each decision appears insignificant when viewed alone, yet together they reshape an entire life. Character is rarely destroyed in a single dramatic moment. More often it is worn away through repeated choices that place convenience above virtue. Pay careful attention to the standards by which you evaluate yourself. If your sense of worth rises and falls with praise, then your peace has been placed into the hands of strangers. If your confidence depends entirely upon success, then every setback will appear to threaten your identity. A disciplined person refuses to measure himself by conditions that cannot be fully controlled. Instead, he asks whether his actions reflected justice, moderation, courage, and wisdom regardless of the outcome. These qualities remain available even when circumstances become unfavorable. Consider how easily pride disguises itself as strength. Pride seeks admiration before truth. It protects reputation even when correction is necessary. It resists admitting mistakes because appearances seem more valuable than growth. Yet genuine strength requires the opposite. It welcomes honest examination. It accepts responsibility without excuse. It recognizes that acknowledging an error does not diminish character, refusing to correct one does. The person who values integrity above appearance becomes increasingly difficult to deceive because he has already chosen truth over comfort. Each morning, before your responsibilities begin, remind yourself that today will present opportunities to choose between principle and convenience. Some decisions will seem too small to matter. You may be tempted to speak carelessly because no one appears to be listening. You may consider avoiding a difficult responsibility because delay feels easier than effort. You may find yourself justifying impatience because another person behaved poorly. These ordinary moments determine the condition of your character far more than rare moments of public recognition. Great integrity is built through small acts performed consistently. Throughout the day, examine your motives as carefully as your actions. Two people may perform the same outward task while cultivating entirely different inner lives. One acts from duty, another acts from vanity. One speaks honestly because truth deserves respect. Another speaks honestly only when it improves his image. Outward behavior alone cannot reveal the condition of the soul. Therefore, become your own examiner. Ask not only what you are doing, but why you are doing it. A pure intention strengthens even humble actions. A corrupted intention weakens even impressive accomplishments. When another person behaves unjustly toward you, remember that your greatest danger is not their conduct, but your temptation to imitate it. Nothing damages your character more quickly than allowing another person's weakness to become permission for your own. Preserve fairness even when treated unfairly. Maintain honesty even when deception appears profitable. Continue choosing moderation even when excess surrounds you. Victory belongs to the person who refuses to surrender virtue simply because circumstances make vice appear easier. There will be moments when doing what is right costs you opportunities, approval, comfort, or temporary advantage. Do not mistake these moments for defeat. If preserving integrity requires sacrifice, then the sacrifice itself becomes evidence that your principles are genuine rather than convenient. A person who abandons virtue whenever it becomes expensive never truly possessed it. Character proves itself when remaining faithful demands something difficult. Each evening, before sleep, conduct an examination that no audience can perform for you. Ask whether your choices today strengthened or weakened the person you are becoming. Ask where fear influenced your judgment, where pride resisted correction, where desire sought control, and where reason successfully guided your conduct. This daily review transforms ordinary experience into continual training. Day after day, honest examination builds a character that no external success can improve and no external failure can destroy. When you finally understand that every true victory begins within the government of your own mind, the entire meaning of success changes. You stop asking whether the world applauded your efforts and begin asking whether your conscience can approve them. You stop measuring life by possessions that may disappear and begin measuring it by virtues that cannot be taken from you without your own consent. This is the only triumph that remains secure through praise and criticism, prosperity and hardship, gain and loss. Every other victory depends upon fortune. This one depends upon the disciplined use of your own reason, and for that reason it can remain yours for as long as you choose to protect it. Number 10. Practice Stoicism every single day. You do not become disciplined by understanding Stoicism. You become disciplined by practicing it when it is inconvenient, when it is unremarkable, and when no one is watching. Many people treat philosophy as something to admire from a distance, something to agree with intellectually while continuing to live unchanged. But wisdom that remains untested in daily life is only decoration for the mind. It does not govern action. It does not reshape character. It does not prevent suffering born from unexamined judgment. A life that does not practice philosophy every day is still ruled by impulse, even if it speaks beautifully about reason. Each day begins with a mind already leaning in certain directions. It carries habits formed through repetition, automatic reactions, familiar complaints, unchecked assumptions, and emotional reflexes that feel like truth simply because they have been repeated often. If you do not actively guide your mind, it will continue following these patterns without questioning them. Practice is not optional. It is the only force that replaces unconscious living with deliberate living. Without daily correction, the mind drifts back into old habits as naturally as water flows downhill. The first practice of daily Stoicism is to begin the morning with honesty about what lies ahead. Before you engage with the world, prepare yourself for the kinds of impressions you will encounter. People may act unfairly, plans may fail, your expectations may be disrupted, your patience may be tested. None of this is unusual. What matters is not whether these events occur, but whether you are prepared to respond without surrendering your judgment. When you expect difficulty without fear, you rob it of its power to surprise you into irrational reaction. Then turn your attention inward before the day pulls it outward. Examine the state of your mind while it is still quiet enough to be observed. Notice what desires are already forming, what anxieties are already present, and what judgments are waiting to be accepted without question. Do not trust every thought that appears simply because it appears. Thoughts are not commands, they are impressions, and impressions require examination. Ask whether each thought belongs to reason or whether it is merely habit disguised as certainty. As the day unfolds, the practice continues in real time. Every situation that triggers emotion becomes an opportunity to train judgment. When something irritates you, pause long enough to recognize that the irritation is not caused by the event itself, but by your interpretation of it. When something pleases you, examine whether your pleasure depends on something you cannot control. When something frightens you, ask whether the fear is grounded in present reality or in imagined outcomes that may never occur. This constant examination is not a withdrawal from life. It is the deepest engagement with it. One of the greatest errors in daily living is allowing the first emotional response to become the final decision. Anger, fear, desire, and pride all speak quickly, seeking immediate agreement. But speed is not truth. The disciplined mind introduces a pause between impression and response. In that pause, reason regains authority. Without that space, you are not choosing your actions, you are merely continuing the momentum of emotional reaction. Daily practice means protecting that space repeatedly until it becomes natural. You must also practice separating what belongs to you from what does not. Much of daily suffering comes from trying to control outcomes that are not within your power. You cannot control how others behave, how events unfold, or how circumstances shift beyond your influence. What you can control is your judgment, your intention, and your response. Every time you confuse these two categories, you create unnecessary frustration. Every time you separate them clearly, you recover peace. This distinction is not theoretical. It must be applied hundreds of times in small moments throughout the day. Another essential practice is correcting your interpretation of difficulty. The mind tends to label inconvenience as harm, resistance as injustice, and delay as failure. These interpretations are not facts, they are judgments, and judgments can be revised. When something challenges you, ask what part of your character is being trained by this situation. Patience is strengthened by delay. Self-control is strengthened by temptation. Clarity is strengthened by confusion. If you only measure your day by comfort, you will misunderstand its value. If you measure it by the quality of your response, every situation becomes meaningful training. Daily Stoicism also requires discipline in speech. Words are not neutral. They shape both the speaker and the listener. Speaking without reflection often spreads unnecessary emotion, reinforces complaints, and strengthens habits of exaggeration. Before speaking, ask whether your words are necessary, truthful, and helpful to character. Silence is often not emptiness, but control. A person who speaks only with intention preserves energy for judgment, instead of wasting it on reaction. You will notice that much of what disturbs you during the day has little to do with external events and much to do with internal expectations. You expected people to act differently, you expected outcomes to unfold smoothly, you expected life to align with preference. When reality does not match expectation, frustration appears. The solution is not to eliminate expectation entirely, but to examine it before accepting it. Ask whether your expectation is reasonable or whether it depends on conditions you cannot guarantee. The fewer unjustified expectations you carry, the fewer disappointments you will create for yourself. Evening reflection completes the daily cycle of practice. Before sleep, review the day without excuse or distortion. Identify where you reacted instead of choosing, where you accepted impressions without examination, where you allowed emotion to override reason. Do not perform this review to punish yourself. Perform it to understand yourself. Self-awareness is the foundation of improvement. Without it, change is accidental. With it, change becomes deliberate. As you repeat this cycle day after day, something subtle but profound begins to shift. You no longer rely on inspiration to act wisely. You no longer wait for perfect conditions to practice discipline. You begin to understand that philosophy is not something you occasionally apply. It is something you continuously live. Every moment becomes part of training. Every interaction becomes part of examination. Every difficulty becomes part of development. There will be days when you forget. There will be moments when emotion overwhelms reflection. This is not failure. It is simply an indication that practice must continue. A disciplined life is not built through perfection, but through consistent return. Each time you notice that you have lost clarity and then recover it, you strengthen the habit of awareness. The goal is not to eliminate all mistakes. The goal is to shorten the distance between error and correction. Ultimately, practicing Stoicism every single day is the decision to remain awake within your own life. It is the refusal to let habit, impulse, or external pressure govern your actions without examination. It is the commitment to meet every situation with awareness rather than reaction, with judgment rather than assumption, and with reason rather than impulse. A life governed in this way does not become free from difficulty. It becomes free from unnecessary suffering. And in that freedom lies the quiet strength of a mind that has learned, through daily practice, to govern itself with clarity, discipline, and unwavering attention.